everyone, and welcome back to my studio. Today we will be making my favorite cardigan. I designed this and I absolutely love it, so much so I even made one for myself. Hopefully I can find a photo for you and show you what it looks like. And I have made this using many types of yarn, many sizes of yarn, and it's all come up very well. I have made it with short sleeved, I have made it extra large, extra small, many different sizes I have done with this. But today we are going to be using my hand spun yarn. Now this is a 5mm size hook that I'll use with this. So go out, find an exquisite yarn of, this is pure merino wool, and make it sure, if you're following along with me, make sure that it is a 5mm hook that you will be using, and follow along. If you are interested in my hand spun yarn, please leave a message below. I'm more than happy to supply it for you. I charge $30 per, that's Australian dollars, per 200 grams of yarn, and you would need roughly between 2,000 meters of yarn for the size that we're making today. Obviously, the bigger your hook is, the less yarn that you will require. So for a 6mm hook, I've done 1,800 meters of yarn for that. But obviously your tension and everything will change how much you require. The easiest way to do this is to go by the measurements of the person. So I'm actually doing this as a consignment. I've been ordered to make this for someone, so I thought I may as well take this chance to do a tutorial on it. So she actually is going to be about 70 centimeters long. She wants a long cardigan, and it will be 52 centimeters wide at her back. And yeah, let's see what we need for this. So I've got my yarn all spun up. So as I said, it is pure merino wool. I spin to a 5mm hook, so I have my Furls 5mm hook. I will also need my scissors. I will need my measuring tape. This will all be in metric, so please Google to convert if you need it in inches. Stitch markers, so whatever stitch markers you want to use, and your yarn needle. Alright, let's get this project started. Now that the yarn is all balled up, I can get started. So pulling the end, doing a slip knot, getting your hook. Now I am a 5mm hook I am using. I am making this for around about a size 14 Australian, and I will be making it roughly 70 centimeters long. I will need 125 stitches. Now you need to use an odd number of stitches no matter what size you are doing. You have to have an odd number of stitches for the pattern on the side panels to work. And so what I would suggest is that you measure the length of the person you are making this for, and then do your stitches to get that required length. And because we're working on the length, not crossways, we're working up and down. And then once you have that length, do the required number of stitches that are an odd number to that length. So me, it will be 125 stitches. So we're just chaining 125 stitches. Now you have your 125 stitches, we need to chain one, and you will turn your work missing that first chain and going into the back of the next chain, and we're going to do a row of half double crochet. Now unfortunately the yarn decided to end on the dark part and not the light part. So it might be a little bit difficult to see, but the back of the stitch has a lump, the loop on the back, and the front of the stitch is the V. So let me show you in a light part. So there's the front with the V, and when you turn it over you'll see the loop on the back. So the loop there, that's where we're going into, not the V here. So turn your work so you see all your loops, and we're going to work each stitch into the loop there. So missing that chain one I just did, yarn over, going into loop on the back, grab a yarn, pull it through, and then grab a yarn and pull through all 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over into the next stitch, the back of the stitch, grab a yarn, pull it through, and grab a yarn and pull through all 3 loops on the hook. And then yarn over into the loop on the back of the stitch, grab a yarn, pull it through, and grab a yarn and pull through all 3 loops on the hook. So continue doing those half double crochets all the way along your chain, and I will meet you back here once you have done that. Now that you have finished your chain, just check the length. Now, for some reason I keep saying 70 centimeters. I actually mean 80 centimeters. So this is 80 centimeters in length, and you can do it as long or as short as you like, or the person would like. This is a particularly long one. Now, as you see from the photos, you wrap it across yourself. It's more like a wrap at the front, and it's nice and long to keep your bum warm, but you can make a shorter version, so it's purely up to you. Alright, so row number 3. So the first row we've done our half double crochet row, and the next row is going to be our griddle stitch row. So what you need to do is chain 1, turn your work. Now make sure that your stitch count is an odd count, and the first stitch of every row is going to be a single crochet. So straight into that first stitch, grab a yarn, pull it through, and grab a yarn and pull through the 2 loops on the hook. The next stitch is going to be a double crochet. So yarn over into the next stitch, grab a yarn, pull it through, grab a yarn, pull through the first 2 loops on the hook, and grab a yarn and pull through the last 2 loops on the hook. Next stitch, single crochet. Next stitch, double crochet. 1, 2. Next stitch, single crochet. So straight in, grab a yarn, pull it through, grab a yarn, pull through the 2 loops on the hook. Next stitch, double crochet, yarn over, straight into that stitch, grab a yarn, pull it through, grab a yarn, pull through the first 2, grab a yarn, pull through the other 2. And then single crochet, next stitch, double crochet. And you can see what the pattern is there. So one stitch is a single crochet, and the next stitch is a double crochet, and you repeat that all the way along. So I am going to leave you to finish this row, and I will meet you at the end and show you what we do next. Now that you have finished that row, chain 1, turn your work, and we are doing a second row of griddle stitch. Now at the start of every single row and at the end of every single row will be a single crochet. So you should have finished that last row with a single crochet. If not, you'll need to go back and figure out where you went wrong. Now the next row you start single crochet, so straight into the first stitch, grab your yarn, pull it through, grab your yarn, pull through the first 2 loops on the hook, and then the next stitch should be your double crochet, and then your next stitch your single crochet, So what it should be is that your single crochet goes on top of your single crochet and your double crochet goes on top of your double crochet. Now it can be quite easy to see the difference between a single and a double. A single is just looks like a big V, and a double will have that gap, hope you can see there, that gap there where you put your stitch through, and a single straight through the middle. So your single doesn't have the little, the single doesn't have the little cap there, whereas your double, as you can see, your double does. Okay, so if you get yourself lost, that's how you tell the difference where you're at. Now you'll need to do 10 rows of griddle stitch. So we're starting our second row and you need to do a total of 10. This is when I also use a stitch marker, and I'll mark the first row because of griddle, because you might get carried away and think that first row that we did down here, which was half double crochet, was part of it. So mark your first row of griddle, and then it's easy to see where it is and count up. Alright, so I'm going to leave you to do your 10 rows in total of griddle stitch, so your single crochets and your double crochets, and then I will meet you back here when you have finished your 10 rows of griddle stitch. Now that you have finished your 10 rows of griddle stitch, what you need to do next, chain 1, turn your work, and now we are going to do half double crochets. So yarn over, go into your first stitch, grab your yarn, pull it through, grab your yarn and pull through all 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over into the next stitch, grab your yarn, pull it through, grab your yarn and pull through all 3 loops on the hook. And keep going to the end of the row. Now you will be doing 44 rows of half double crochet. When you have completed your 44 rows, come back. But before you continue on, grab one of your stitch markers, and I would suggest that you mark the beginning of that row you've just started with one of your stitch markers, so that it will be row 1 of your 44 rows, and that way you can keep an idea of where you will be. I would suggest that you do a stitch marker on every 10 rows or even every 20 rows, so that you can just count the gaps between the stitch markers to know how many rows you've done, rather than having to count the whole lot again and again. Alrighty, so continue on for 44 rows, and I will meet you back here when you have completed that. Finished our first side panel. So you need to make this so that it is wide enough to go from armpit to armpit. And for me, I did the 44 rows from the border that we did down here. So now that I've done those rows and I'm happy with that, I now need to form the armhole. So what we need to do is grab a stitch marker and then count 20 stitches in. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Put your stitch marker there. Then you need to count 30 stitches and put your next stitch marker at the 30 stitches. So I've got my 30 stitches there and I put my stitch marker there. Okay, so what we're now going to do is half double crochet to and including that stitch marker. Alright, so we need to chain 1, turn your work, and half double crochet to that first stitch marker and including that, so that should be your 20 stitches. And 20. Okay, so now what we need to do is chain 30. So what we're doing is we're skipping this 30 along here by chaining 30, which creates the hole for the arm. Now it will be bigger if you slipped your arm in there. It will be bigger than the arm that you've got. If it's too big for your arm, this is a size 14 to 16 Australian person I'm making this for. And if it's if you want it smaller, do less rows. So I would suggest probably 5 less stitches for a size 10 to 12. And put another 5 more stitches, I would suggest, for a size 18 and so on and so forth. All right, so we are going to chain 30. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we've got our chain of 30. This stitch marker here marked my 30th stitch, so I want to go into the next stitch marker. So we're doing a half double crochet, so yarn over. Now this can be a little tricky, so yarn over, go into the stitch, grab your yarn, pull it through, and then I would suggest holding all your stitches together like that, and then grab your yarn and pull through all the loops on the hook, and then continue half double crocheting to the end of the row. Now we've come to the end of the row. Chain 1, down your work, and continue half double crocheting this next row until you get to the beginning of that chain. And once you are there, I will meet you back here and show you what to do next. Okay, so we've reached the chain. So there's a stitch just before the chain there, so grab that one, and then when you get to the chain, turn it upside down and work your stitches on the back of the stitch, just like when we started this project. If you work it on the top, it's not going to have a nice neat finish, and when you join the arm, it's going to look a bit funny. So it is a lot better if you can turn it over and work your stitches in the back. So when you do that, turn it over, go into that loop in the back, grab your yarn, pull it through, grab your yarn and pull through all 3 loops on the hook. So keep doing your half double crochets, and it can be a bit tricky, but just keep turning it over till you've got that loop. Once you've got the first couple done, it gets a lot easier. And work your way down. Count your stitches when you do finish this, just to make sure you've done your 30 stitches in your chain here. And then when you get to the end of the chain, just keep working to the end. When you get to the end of this row, make sure you count your stitches to have the original count that you had at the beginning. So me, that is 125 stitches. This is really easy to lose a stitch somewhere, and most of the time you'll lose the stitch on this chain. So just make sure that when you get to the end of putting all your stitches in the chain and you get to the end of the row, you have your original count. And I will meet you at the end of the row and show you what we need to do next. Okay, so we've finished that row now, and you'll see that you now have your armhole. I do recommend slip it over your arm or the person you're making it for, and just check. It should be big. It should be big and loose and not tight around the arm. That row there counts as row 1 as the back panel, and that's what we're working on next. So I grab my stitch marker and I put it in the end of the row so that I know that that was row 1 of my back panel. Okay, now what I need to do, I've measured my person and they are 52 centimeters wide on the back. So now I have to make the back panel enough rows to be 52 centimeters. Now I'm guessing it'll be about 60 rows. So basically measure between the shoulders, so one side of the shoulder to the other, on the outside of the shoulders, measure that, and that is the width you need to do your back. When you have done enough rows, meet me back here and I will confirm with you how many rows I will be doing to get that 52 centimeters that I need. We have now finished the back panel, and it is so large I can't fit it in the camera, but there's the armhole, and here is the back panel. And for me to be the 52 centimeters that I need for the back here for my client, it was 56 rows. Now what we need to do is repeat exactly what we did at the beginning with the armhole and the side panel, the front panel, and we need to repeat that in reverse. So we need to do the armhole next, and then copying the other front panel in reverse. So what the first thing we need to do is grab one of your stitch markers and count your 20 rows. Now you have your 20 rows, put your stitch marker into the next stitch, grab another stitch marker and count your 30 rows. Put in your stitch marker at the 30th row. So these two stitch markers should mark your 30. So that's number 1 and that's number 30. Then remember what you need to do is to work your half double crochet up to the stitch marker. So chaining 1, turn your work and work your half double crochet up to that stitch marker, so your 20 rows stitches. Now you've done your 20 half double crochet, remember you now need to do your chain of 30. Now that you have your chain of 30, what you need to do, if you remember, is go to that stitch after the stitch marker there, in that stitch there, and do your half double crochet. So yarn over, and I hold it with my thumb so it doesn't come off because it often does. Go into that stitch, grab a yarn, pull it through, and then I hold with my thumb the stitches, yarn over and go through all 3 loops on the hook, and then continue your half double crochets for the rest of this row. So at the end of that row, chain 1, turn your work your way up that row to your chain. Now remember, when you get to your chain, you need to turn that chain upside down so you have the loop there, and then work your half double crochets into the back of the loop. Always the first couple seem to be tricky, and then it gets really easy. When you've finished working in the back of the loop of your chain, then continue the rest of the stitches to the end, or half double crochet, and make sure you count that you have the right amount of stitches that you started off with. So for me, and if you're following along with me, it is 125. So make sure when you finish this row that you have your 125 stitches still. Now that you have finished that row and created your armhole, that is the first row of the second front panel. I move a stitch marker up to that end of that first row to mark that that was your first row. Now a tip here is to make sure that your armhole has started, is at the same size as the other one. So i.e. 20 stitches here, 20 stitches here, because it would look a bit funny if you did it the other way around. So if you find you finished your row of your back up the other opposite end of where the armhole should be, you can either go to the end of the row and count down and mark out, or do an extra row or undo a row so that you've started the same way. Whatever you do to make sure your armholes are the same size, make sure you check that your armholes are the same side and not lopsided. I hope that makes sense for you. All right. Continue doing the amount of rows that you need to do, the same amount of rows that you did on your other front panel. For me, that was 44 rows. So I'm going to continue my other 43 rows, and then I will meet you back here to remind you what you do for the band. Okay, so we have now finished our second side panel. So that was 44 rows for me, or whatever it is that you did on your first side panel, repeat on your second. So 44 rows for me. And now we are up to doing the griddle stitch edging for our side panel. So if you remember, you need to chain one, turn your work, and your first stitch of every row is a single crochet. Second stitch is a double crochet. Next stitch, single. Next stitch, double. Next stitch, single. So remember, you are repeating this single crochet and double crochet all the way to the end, and your last stitch should always be a single crochet. Chain one, turn your work, and then continue for 9 more rows. So this is row 1 of our panel, our griddle stitch. You will have to do a total of 10 rows. So I'm going to leave you to do your 10 rows of griddle stitch, and I will meet you back here when you have done that. All right, we're at the end of our 10 rows of griddle stitch, and 1 more row of this panel to do. So chain 1, turn your work, and do 1 row of half double crochet. And once you have finished that row, that is the end of this panel, and you can end that row. So I will meet you back at the end of this row. Alright, so we're end of the half double crochet row, and just need to snip off the end and just bring it through, sew that in, and now we are going to start on the arms. We are now up to the sleeves. So go to one of your sleeve holes and go to the bottom of it. So there's the top where it's shorter, and the bottom where it is longer. You got your long edge there. Get your hook and put it close to the bottom here, to the V at the bottom of your sleeve there. Start your yarn however you start your yarn. Chain 1, and what you will be doing is putting a stitch in every stitch that you can see there. So basically it should be putting a stitch on top of the stitch that we created the armhole for, and just work your way all the way around, putting a stitch in every previous stitch. So you can see there were stitches all along there, and we're just putting a stitch on top of there. It doesn't matter how many you do, just make sure that it is greater than 50, because I'll tell you when we get there in the end. So it needs to be over 50 stitches. And if you've worked out your armhole right, it will be easily over 50 stitches. So keep working your way around, and when you get back to the start, I will show you what to do next. Okie dokie, now that you are back at the beginning, put a stitch in the same hole that you started with, so the same stitch. Now the reason why we do this is because it closes it up and makes a nicer seam down the arm. And the reason why we start on the long side under the armpit is so that your seam will be under the arm and not show as well. So it makes it a lot neater. So now that we've come to the end of the row and we're at the beginning of the round, we need to join this together. So slip stitch into that first stitch of the round there. So just go straight into the stitch, just into the top of the stitch there. Grab your yarn and pull it through and pull through the loop on the hook. Chain one and then turn your work. So for the first stitch of every row until you get to 50 stitches, you're going to be reducing a stitch, a decrease stitch at the first stitch of every row you do until you have 50 stitches remaining. So make sure you count how many stitches you have now, because you need to repeat that amount of stitches on your other arm so they are the same. So jot that down somewhere, and then for the first 2 stitches we're doing a decrease. So what we do is we go yarn over straight into that first stitch. Now don't go into that stitch there. Okay, you're going into this one here. So not where you've just done the chain one here. You'll see there's a little gap there. Don't be tempted to go into there. Go into this one here. So go straight in, grab a yarn, pull it through. Go into the next stitch, go straight in, grab a yarn, pull it through, and then grab a yarn and pull through all the loops on the hook. That is a decrease stitch. And then just continue doing half double crochets in all the other stitches until you get back to the beginning of the round. When you are there, I will show you what we do next. Okay, so we are at the end of our second row, and remember you need to put a stitch into that same stitch you started with. So straight in there, do your half double crochet. Now before I forget, this is row 2. So in row 1, place a stitch marker so that you know where you started your sleeve, because you need to count up your rows. And I would suggest every 10 to 20 rows, place a stitch marker so you can count up and know how many rows you are up to. Now that we're at the end of this round, we've met the beginning of the round, let's slip stitch that together. Chain one, turn your work, and it's a decrease row again. So remember, at the start of every row until you have 50 stitches left, you are decreasing. So you need to decrease at the start of every row till you have 50 stitches left. So remember, yarn over, straight into that first stitch, grab a yarn, pull it through. Straight into the second stitch, grab the yarn, pull it through, and then grab your yarn and pull through all the loops on the hook. And then in the next stitches all the way to the end, keep half double crocheting. Remember, at the start of every stitch, at the start of every row until you get to 50 stitches, decrease. So you're decreasing 1 stitch at the start of every row. When you have 50 stitches left, then meet me back here. Remember also that when you're finishing a row, you will finish your stitch in the same stitch you started. That makes it nice and neat all the way up. And then also this will also do your slip stitch into that, chain one, turn your work. Now I'm going to meet you back here. We'll go through it one more time, and then I'm going to leave you to reduce until you have 50 stitches left. Back at the beginning of the round, so remember your stitch goes straight into the same stitch you started, and then slip stitch together. Chain one, turn your work, and then we're doing a decrease round again, so straight into this stitch. Now remember, do not go into that one there where your chain came off. Go into this one, grab your yarn, pull it through, go into the next one, grab your yarn, pull it through, and grab your yarn and pull through all the loops on the hook, and then continue your half double crochets around. Alright, I am going to leave you to finish this bit until you have 50 stitches left, and then I will meet you back here and show you what to do next. Just finishing the row of my 50 stitches. So in the last stitch there, and at this point, because now I've got 50 stitches left, this point you have two options. You can either continue your sleeve all the way up to 45 rows and keep those 50 stitches, 45 rows. That'll give you a nice wide sleeve, and if that's the look that you want, just keep doing another X amount of rows until you have 45. Now I started off with 61 stitches when I created my sleeve, and therefore I have reduced down 11 rows to get to my 50 stitches. I could just keep going with my 50 stitches all the way up to 45 rows. However, the person that I am making this for would like a sleeve that narrows in. So therefore I am going to be reducing, but slightly different, until I get to my 45 rows. So what I am going to do now is I am going to join my row together. Now if you are following along with me and want to keep reducing to get a smaller sleeve, this is what you need to do. Otherwise I will meet you back here at your 45th row if you're continuing without decreasing. So if you are going to decrease, join your row together, chain one, and what we are going to do is the next 4 rows we are just simply going to do half double crochets all the way around for each stitch for the next 4 rows. At this point, you've come a little way in, grab your stitch marker, put it in one of those stitches, and this will indicate to you that this is row 1 of those 4 rows. When you have finished this row, I will meet you back here and show you what to do next. At the end of that row, that first row, the set of 4, join your row together, chain 1, turn your work, and we are not decreasing, so straight into that next stitch and keep going. So this is row number 2. Do a total of 4 rows. So this is row number 2, and after this row do another 2, and I will meet you back here at the end of that row. I'm at the end of the 4th row, so now I just want to join the row together, chain 1, turn my work, and this is now going to become a decrease round. So you've done 4 rounds without decreasing whatsoever, and this round, which is the 5th of this little section, we're going to decrease. So yarn over, straight into that first stitch, grab your yarn, pull it through, go into the next stitch, grab your yarn, pull it through, and then grab your yarn and pull through all the loops on the hook. Continue half double crocheting till the end of the round. We are now at the end of that round, so this 5 rows here, this was the decrease row, we're now at the end of that, and you should have 49 stitches left. Join your row together, chain 1, turn your work, and now this is the repeat of before where we did 4 rounds without decreasing. So start your 4 rounds half double crocheting without a decrease, and then the 5th round is going to be your decrease round, which will bring it down to 48. Now you need to repeat this 5 row repeat until you have 45 stitches left. When you have done that, I will meet you back here and show you what to do next. We are now at the 45th decrease round, and I have finished that. I just need to join the row together, chain 1, turn your work, and now we're continuing without decreasing whatsoever until we have 45 rows done. So for me, that's another 10 rows I need to do. So just keep going around, working around as normal without any decrease until you have 45 rows. And when you have 45 rows, come back to me and I'll show you how to do the cuff. Alright, so the sleeve is now, I've done my 45 rows and I'm now up to doing the cuff. This one is slightly different to what I would normally do because this customer wants a matching cowl and headband to go with this, and I don't have enough yarn to be able to do that. So I've changed it to, and I've made up, you can see here's my other sleeve. So the cuff is making up with a corresponding colour, and the headband and the cowl will have that as the edging and the main part with the colour there. So this cuff will eventually be that, but I want to show you in this lighter colour because it's a lot easier to see than that other colour. So what we, but when I come back to this, you'll see that it will actually be the darker colour. But for now, let's show you how to do this. So we're going to make a cuff. Now the cuff is matching the edge that we started off with. So that's the edge of the cardigan, the front, and that was the griddle stitch. So we're going to go back to doing the griddle stitch again. So join your last row, your 45th row together, chain 1, turn your work. Now this is why we need an odd number of stitches on the cuff, because we need to start and end with a single crochet. So if you remember what we were doing with the griddle stitch, it was one stitch. Your first stitch is going to be a single crochet, and the second stitch, here's the second stitch, is your double crochet. So the next stitch, single crochet, next stitch, double crochet, next stitch, single crochet, next stitch, double crochet. So when you get back to the end here, you should finish off with a single crochet. So I'm up to my last stitch of my first round of griddle stitch on my cuff, and so this stitch going in here is my last stitch, and that is a single crochet. Join the row together as normal with your slip stitch, chain 1, turn your work, and your first stitch will always be a single crochet. Your last stitch will always be a single crochet. And like before, you can see where to put your single crochet. It's going into that V looking stitch there, and your double crochet goes into the top of the next stitch there. So your single crochet, always start with a single and then go to your double, single, double, and repeat this for 8 rows. So that was row 1 that we did. We're starting row 2, and you need to repeat this for 8 rows. When you have finished that, I will meet you back here, and it will be a different color. As I said, it's going to look like that, and I will show you the last step. Alrighty, I'm at the end of my 8th row. I'm just going to finish off that row as normal with a slip stitch, chain 1, turn your work, and now this is the last row, and this last row will be a half double crochet row all the way around. So simply do 1 half double crochet row. Finished our 1 row of double crochet, so join your row together, and this, now you can snip off the end, pull it through, and then sew in your ends And there is your sleeve done. And now you need to repeat this whole process again for your second sleeve. And once you have done that, you have finished your garment. And here we are, all finished. Now unfortunately I can't fit it in the camera. There's one sleeve, there's the other sleeve, and here are some photos of the finished product. I really love using my hand spun yarn. I love how it turns out, but as I've said at the beginning, you can use any yarn. I've used thick yarn, thin yarn, I've made it small, I've made it long, I've shortened the sleeves, I've done different colors, I've done lots of color work. There are many ways you can use this pattern, so just let your creative juices flow. Match it up with a clip. So you can use this clip. I got it off Amazon. It clips onto the garment wherever you want it to go, and then it just hooks together like so. And I think they were like maybe $3 each. But I use for my cardigan that I have made one of these for myself as well, and I use this. This is what we make. My hubby makes these, and they are available. If you are interested, just drop me a line. Thank you everybody for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. I have many more tutorials out there, so please take a look on my YouTube channel. And if you liked anything, like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And hopefully I will see you again here sometime soon for the next tutorial. Alright, take care everyone. Bye everyone.